let's talk about the anatomy of a sold. And what exactly do I mean by that? So you all get them. You get the just sold postcard in the mail, and it says, here's what it listed for, here's what it sold for, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, etc. And I think to myself, how is that helping you as the consumer? So you see that this agent just sold a property, but what happened in order to get it sold? So here's what I want to start doing with you, if you will allow me to. I want to start discussing each property that I've recently sold, and I want to title it The Anatomy of a Sold. So the first one I want to start with is the Hobbit House, where we started from listing to negotiations to escrow to closing. What were the terms? How did that process work? So let's start with the listing aspect. So this seller reached out to me. She'd been getting my information for years, and she really felt comfortable and she trusted me. What brought her to me also was a piece that I did about selling your house off market. So what does that mean? You list your house, you have all the same terms as you do on an open market, but it doesn't go on MLS. So you're not going to see it on Zillow, you're not going to see it on realtor.com. It's simply my listing to share with my client database and close agents that I know. But rules prevent me in an off-market listing from going to the general public and posting it all over Facebook and all of the things that we normally would do as agents. So that does put some restrictions on you. But selling off-market with an agent as myself that's been experienced for 35 years, my reach is really, really far. So we tried that approach, selling off-market. Here's the thing with this house. Super charming, located in Montrose, was under, what did we list that for? We listed that in the high 800 range. So it was really a good price point, tons of character, and the location in Montrose was outstanding. But not having the ability to reach those buyers that were looking for charm and character hindered the types of offers we were getting. We were getting lowball offers from investors because the zoning was also R2, which would allow someone to do a guest house, or as they call them, ADUs. So we were getting offers that were not to her liking. And what the seller really wanted was a buyer that loved her house. And I know some of you are saying, who cares? As long as you're getting the money, what does it matter? But let me say this to you, it does absolutely matter. A lot of sellers, they're emotional about their house. They want someone to love their house as much as they do. That's not always the case. But this particular seller, she raised her family in this home, and she wanted to see it go to someone who loved the character, had a family, wanted to start a family, that would just enjoy it, all the different things that she did. So here's what we did. We got tired of getting the lowball offers. So finally we decided, okay, we're gonna go on market, which means we're gonna list it in MLS. It's gonna go on all the popular websites. Every agent is gonna have access to it. So we could encourage more buyers to come in, and she could get the type of buyer she was looking for. And she did. We did not do a sign, we did not do a lockbox, we did appointment only because she really valued her privacy. And I knew that she was going to have no problem getting the type of buyer she wanted. Within 2 weeks, we had 9 offers. Every single offer was over list price and had phenomenal terms. So the hardest part for this particular seller was us going one by one through these offers, evaluating not only the terms, but what were they, did she like them? It really mattered if she liked this buyer. And I know you might think, oh, that just sounds crazy. Why does she care who this buyer is? But I will say to you, the seller having a connection to their buyer in a lot of cases is very important. The problem here, she liked every single one of these buyers. So it was really a difficult choice. So she wound up taking someone that offered her well over list price, removed the appraisal contingency, and I'll get to that later, removed the inspection contingency, I'll explain that later, only had a loan contingency, had 20% down, offered her a 30-day escrow, and they also offered her a rent back for 29 days, and I'll explain what that means. So let me break the terms down for you. So 30-day escrow, pretty self-explanatory. We're going to open an escrow. You're going to follow the terms of the contract. You're going to close in 30 days. So that was simple. No appraisal contingency. So what does she have? I'm sorry, let me back up. They had an appraisal contingency. So what that means is it has to appraise for what we agreed upon. They had no loan contingency. So as long as that appraisal contingency came in and the appraisal was fine and they removed that, that meant them qualifying for the loan, them having the ability to get the financing was not a contingency of a transaction. So it's a term we didn't have to worry about. No inspection contingency. This is huge. I don't recommend it to my buyers, but this agent and this client felt comfortable doing that. So here's what that means. When you have no inspection contingency, it means you can go do whatever inspections you want, but whatever you find, it doesn't matter because you are agreeing upfront to accept that property in its current conditions with all of its flaws. But let me share something with you that I ask my sellers to do, and this seller did it. I asked them to do pre-inspections. So we did a home inspection, we did a foundation inspection. She had just upgraded the electrical panel and all the electrical in the house, so we're not worried about that. We did do a sewer line inspection. So we had between our mandatory disclosures and all of the inspections, we had a lot of information to hand off to the buyer. Now, we're not representing anything on those inspections. It's just the people that we hired or she hired and what they felt the condition of the house was. It's just additional information to hand over to a potential buyer. They felt they had enough, so they felt comfortable removing that inspection contingency. So they still had, per our contract, they had 10 days to still have access to the property. So that means that if they want to bring mom and dad, if they want to bring the painter, the carpet, whoever they want to bring into the house, with a phone call and setting up an appointment, that buyer would have access to the property. They chose not only to have contractors come through the house, but they also had another foundation inspection, another electrician in the house, a roofer in the house. I think they had every kind of inspection possible on this house. And in the end, they still stayed in the transaction because they did not have a contingency to back out based on that. But what it did do is this seller, she was very private, she was elderly. It did start to unnerve her a little bit. So what my job is to take care of the client and make sure that they're okay, they're not stressing out. Well, this was starting to stress her out. So I would reach out to the other agent and say, hey, can you guys slow it down a little bit? Maybe we'll give you a couple more days to have access to the house. But this is really starting to get on her a bit and kind of get at her nerves. And you never want your seller uncomfortable. You don't want anyone in the transaction uncomfortable. So my job is to make sure that I'm reading that client and taking care of that client and keeping her calm and letting her know what she can and cannot do with these clients per the contract. And she was phenomenal. So we get through all the inspections. Now we're moving into closing and the buyer's loan is funding. Everyone's signing off on everything and we close. Now, let's talk about a rent back. This particular client, she had lived in this home for a very long time. She did not have tons of things compared to so many houses that I've sold over the years. But, you know, she's older. She doesn't have a lot of family in the area. So she needed time to go through everything and get packed and move. So we negotiated what's called a seller in possession. That's only 29 days. Why is it only 29 days? Because the minute you go to 30 days, then the seller becomes a tenant and you now have a tenant relationship as opposed to a seller in possession. So that one day makes a big difference. So here are the terms of that. She did her 29-day rent back for $1. And buyers and sellers can negotiate that fee. Sometimes the buyer says, look, you can stay, but I want you to make my payment for me. Or, hey, what's your payment, Mrs. Seller? And we'll pay, you have to pay that. Or you do like we did. And I said, look, you know, you were up against 9 offers. It put us in the driver's seat for terms and conditions. And we said, look, we want to stay for 29 days at $1. And the buyer agreed to that. So she took her time. She was able to pack her things and move out on time as scheduled, even during the holidays. So one of the things you have to remember with these rent backs is they're done for several reasons. She just needed time to pack. A lot of times they're done because the seller hasn't found their other house or their rental. They need the funds to close another escrow. And sometimes sellers just don't have the funds to move, so they need that closing to allow them to move out and go to where they're going. So they are used quite a bit and for quite a few different reasons. In conclusion, this seller got above asking, a 30-day close. She had to barely go on the market. So she was happy with every aspect and her nerves calmed down. She was happy she moved out. The new buyers moved in. And what do we have? We have another successful close. I hope you enjoyed what I'm now calling the anatomy of a sold, so you can kind of see all the different terms that are involved from listing and selling, because every transaction is different. I'll be back again with another anatomy of a sold. For now, I'm Robbyn Battles, and I hope you enjoyed Anatomy of a Sold, the Hobbit House.